Hey friends, let's talk about a simple rule that history keeps enforcing again and again, without drama and without mercy. Any religion or ideology that answers criticism with violence instead of argument is quietly voting itself out of the future. This isn't a moral judgment first, it's a structural one. Violence is not strength. Violence is what happens when an idea runs out of language, when a belief system stops trusting its own logic, its own texts, its own thinkers. It reaches for fear. And fear might control the present, but it always poisons the long term, especially among the educated. Look at Judaism, not as a faith, but as a historical case study. Ancient Judaism did not implode because it was questioned. It imploded because it could not adapt uniformly to power, exile, and internal dissent. The destruction of the Second Temple wasn't just a military defeat, it was an intellectual one. What survived wasn't coercive priesthood or violence against skeptics, but rabbinical debate, argument, reinterpretation. The Judaism that endured did so by turning inward, allowing disagreement to exist inside the system. The parts that couldn't do that disappeared into history. Now look at Islam in the modern world. The global rejection you see among educated youth is not primarily about theology, it's about enforcement. In places where criticism is met with social death, legal punishment, or physical violence, belief stops being belief and becomes compliance. And educated minds are allergic to enforced certainty. They don't reject Islam because it asks big questions. They reject it where it forbids questions altogether. A faith that once led the world in philosophy, mathematics, and science now struggles not because it lacks answers, but because too often it punishes the act of asking. Hinduism gives us a different, quieter fracture. There is no single book to burn or law to enforce, but there is a cultural split. North Indian Hinduism increasingly leans toward identity, rigidity, and political assertion, while South Indian traditions remain more ritualistic, philosophical, and detached from state power. The divide isn't about gods, it's about temperament. One side seeks control and conformity, the other tolerates pluralism and ambiguity. Educated populations instinctively drift toward the latter, not because it's better, but because it leaves room to breathe. This is the pattern. Education doesn't destroy religion. Insecurity does. The moment a belief system treats critics as enemies rather than participants, it signals weakness. Arguments invite engagement. Violence ends conversation. And when conversation ends, relevance follows. The future doesn't belong to religions that shout the loudest or punish the hardest. It belongs to those that can sit calmly in a room full of skeptics and say, ask.